Change. The Metamorphosis of a Life. By André Bianchi. Chapter 1. The First Questions. Before I learned to speak eloquently, I was already asking too many questions. Why do people shout when they're sad? Why is there so much rush and so little joy? Why do they lie on television? Why does what's right seem weak and wrong win applause? The answers came in silence, or laughter, or irritation. You think too much, they said. You're ruining the mood, they complained. But how can you silence a heart born with ears? I saw the world like a symphony out of tune, felt other people's pain as if it were mine, sketched futures in notebook margins, imagined fair countries, gentle cities, people who listened, touched without hurting. While other kids dreamed of becoming astronauts or football players, I dreamed of becoming change. I didn't even know what that meant. But I knew it was possible. At school, I learned to divide. In the street, to toughen up. At home, to observe. That's when doubt turned into restlessness. And restlessness became a compass. I didn't want to grow up to repeat. I wanted to grow up to discover, and if possible, to transform. But one memory, from age 7 or 8, etched itself into my soul. Returning to school after summer break, I looked at the blackboard, the uniform, the new notebooks, and a strange question pierced through me. Why must I start everything again if I've already lived many lives and done this before? The world around me continued, undisturbed. But inside, time froze. And then a calm voice, not mine, answered in silence. Don't worry. One day, you will understand. I wasn't afraid. I felt peace. A warm certainty hugged me from within. I knew, without knowing how, that it had something to do with Jesus, not the religious figure, but an archetype of love so simple and immense, it made everything, even the unknown, make sense. That day I realized my path hadn't just begun, it was merely resuming. Chapter 2. Invisible Portals. Between ages 15 and 17, something opened in me. And it wasn't just physical growth. It felt like the veil of the world trembled for a second, and I glimpsed what was behind it. I entered my first mystery school. There were no exams. There were symbols, silence, and a constant invitation. Dive within. Return to what you already know, but forgot. I began meditating. Realized thoughts weren't just clouds. They were magnets. The mind, if not directed, is dragged. And sometimes reality bends when the desire is clean. I practiced martial arts, kung fu, judo, jiu-jitsu, not as combat but as a path. Each movement was a mantra in motion. The discipline of the body sharpened the spirit. I tried to share it with others. Few understood. My essays puzzled teachers. I learned to stay quiet, without giving up, and to trust those who felt the same way. Chapter 3. Acts of Love. It all began with a simple dinner at a humble restaurant called Nectar, with my friend Carlos. There, an idea lit up the dark. What if we used our school recesses to help those with less? The following week, we acted. With the school's approval, we launched a lunch-sharing campaign in our private school in Murumbi. Each week, one class brought extra food to share with children from the scholarship program, those who couldn't afford a proper lunch. Every recess, we collected the items, sorted them, and distributed them quietly. No noise, no pictures, just respect and smiles. Soon, friends joined in. Gabi, the Paulos, Sitza, Mariana. Our recesses became rituals of kindness. For years, Those moments were our real lessons. That's where I learned. To serve is to pray with your hands. And sometimes, the invisible reveals itself through the tangible. Chapter 4. Initiations. Between ages 18 and 21, the world seemed to open its doors and test my resolve. I had passed the college entrance exam with one of the top scores in the country. A coaching school even featured me in a TV campaign. Objetivo, the best minds. I chose engineering, rigorous, logical, respected. I also became a monitor in Kung Fu. Complemented it with jiu-jitsu and boxing. Balance of strength and discipline. But life humbled me early. In my first semester, I got a 0.5 in linear algebra. It was a shock. The boy who always got straight A's had finally fallen. And it was the best thing that could have happened. Because I learned, excellence is not a trophy. It's a path. And it starts with accepting failure without fear. At the same time, something new called to me. Entrepreneurship, technology, creation. My friend Ricardo had a brand new Apple II. We turned his room into a startup. I stayed at his house for weeks, sleeping little, dreaming big. We launched a consulting business for a law firm. Built an inventory system for an early grocery delivery pioneer called Supribem. And designed a talking robot for a children's science fair. No money, no certainty. Just the thrill of creating something that didn't exist. That's when I realized. I loved building bridges between the invisible and the practical. Between imagination and execution. Between the dream and the spreadsheet. Chapter 5. Thresholds of the Soul. Between 21 and 24, the world became real and mythical. I traveled, not for luxury, but for awe. First, with family and close friends, I visited Egypt. The pyramids stunned us. 2 friends managed to spend a night inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu. I didn't, but felt something ancient stir within. We crossed temples, markets, deserts. It felt like walking through echoes. Later, I went to France. Visited the home of Joan of Arc. Attended a Latin Mass at Notre Dame. Listened to the sacred thunder of silence in stone. Then Israel. I walked through the places where Jesus lived and died, and perhaps still breathes. But what shook me most was Qumran, home of the Essenes. I studied the Dead Sea Scrolls, felt a strange familiarity, as if my memory recognized what my mind could not explain. And then, Peru. With my friends Marcos and Pedro, we hiked to Machu Picchu. We climbed Huayna Picchu and saw a coral snake slide between the rocks. That night, we tried to sleep secretly inside the ancient complex. But fear spoke louder than courage. We descended in the dark, down the sacred mountain. And in Aguas Calientes, we met people who spoke of San Pedro cactus. Visions of elves, openings between worlds. I didn't need the cactus. I had already seen enough to know. Reality is porous. Time is layered. And the soul remembers. Chapter 6. A World to Conquer. After these sacred glimpses, I returned to the real world. The world of deadlines, of businesses, of airports and meetings. I dove into the corporate universe, thirsty to learn, eager to transform, not for money, but for mastery. I studied languages, explored cultures, worked in strategy and business transformation, moved to Italy, did my MBA in France, got married, moved to Japan. In Tokyo, I joined the global transformation of major multinational companies. And soon, I was flying around the world every 15 days. Japan, Australia, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, USA, back to Tokyo. A cycle of luxury, power, and loneliness. At one point, my wife, tired of the rhythm, chose to stay temporarily in Florianopolis with her father. I continued traveling, and every 15 days, I'd stop in Florianopolis just to see her and sleep on her father's couch, until one day he said, "We need to talk to this boy's boss. This isn't a life." And he was right. It was time to land. Chapter 7. A Company is Born. I needed to land, to change, to ground myself in something real and still meaningful. Returning to Brazil felt like the right next step. An opportunity appeared, a startup inside a telecom giant based in Rio de Janeiro. I accepted. It wasn't just a job. It was a mission to help design, from scratch, a nationwide mobile operation. We began with nothing, just a blank sheet of strategy and ambition. I led the construction of the brand, the network, the commercial model. Over 3,000 cell towers built, 1,000 retail partners developed, 1,000 people hired. A new emotional brand was born. And on day one of operations, we had 800,000 customers. It became a global case study. One of the most successful telecom launches in the world. And in the midst of all that, my son was born. Chapter 8. The child that changed everything. My son was born in Rio de Janeiro. And suddenly, life shifted. There was a depth I hadn't known before. A softness, a sense of purpose no project had ever given me. One day, I had to travel to Spain for a week. When I returned, exhausted from a 12-hour flight, I walked in the door. He threw himself onto my neck, wouldn't let go. I took a shower holding him, still clinging to me, as if I'd been gone for years. That moment broke something in me. The spell of career, speed, performance. I had traveled the world, managed teams, moved millions. But this one embrace, this tiny child's need, revealed how much I had missed and how deeply I too needed him. And his mother. And myself. I had to change again. Chapter 9. The Power of Pause. After that, something shifted inside. I didn't leave the corporate world immediately, but I began questioning its cost. I took on one more challenge. A major transformation project in São Paulo for one of the most respected media groups in Brazil. We reimagined their digital strategy. Newspapers, radio, mobile, web TV, local search, a national news agency. Even a social network that, at the time, had more active users than Facebook in Brazil. It was exhilarating and draining. I had the apartment with the park view, the weekend house by the lake, the car I had dreamed of. I played golf on Wednesdays. I dined at Michelin-starred restaurants. I dove in Tahiti, Fiji, the Maldives, Bonaire. From the outside, perfection. But the inside was fading. I had forgotten my roots, confused myself with the character I was playing. I gained weight, drank too much. My blood pressure soared. My body said stop. My family felt it too, and I heard it clearly. Change, again. Chapter 10. The Inner Collapse. I had insisted a little longer in the world of startups and corporate life. Now in São Paulo, I took the helm of digital transformation in one of Brazil's most iconic media and journalism companies. We overhauled everything: the newspapers, the radio stations, the mobile platforms, launched a web TV, created a national news agency, developed a local search engine, even built a social network, which, for a while, had more users in Brazil than Facebook. On the outside, I was thriving, a leader, respected, successful. But inside, something began to collapse. Between meetings and metrics, I felt the silence growing louder. I had reached the peak of what that world could offer, and it wasn't enough. I looked around. The apartment, the lake house, the car, the travel, the status, and realized none of it was truly mine. They were trophies of a character I no longer recognized. The deeper truth, I was tired of pretending, of performing, of chasing. And most of all, I was tired of being disconnected from myself. I had everything I thought I wanted, and yet I felt empty. That was when the inner collapse happened. Not dramatic, but deep. The kind that whispers, "You're not who you're supposed to be anymore." And that whisper became a call. To stop, to strip away the excess, to begin again, from within. Chapter 11. The Illusion of the Third Dimension. By then, I had accumulated experience across 4 continents: Italy, France, Japan, Brazil. I had led major transformations, held positions of power, owned the apartment with the park view, a beautiful house in a country club, played golf on Wednesdays, drove the car I wanted, dined where I pleased, traveled to paradise beaches. I had it all, the full experience of what I call life in the third dimension. The life they teach us to desire, to chase, to applaud. And yet, the void appeared. Chapter 12. The Return to the Essential. It was time to change. Change, not as a buzzword, but as an inner calling I could no longer ignore. The first major turning point. A sincere search for something more essential. Money no longer moved me, nor power, but nature did, and family, and simplicity. We left the high-speed life behind and moved to Florianopolis, my wife's hometown. There, between the sea and the mountains, I began to reconnect with the principles of my childhood and with a spirituality that had long fallen asleep. It wasn't an escape, it was a return. I began swimming regularly again. I walked along the island's more than 40 beaches. Nature started speaking to me again, and so did silence. I changed my habits. Woke up earlier, breathed more consciously, ate with presence, and learned to live by the rhythm of the tides and the wind. I played in the backyard with my son. I felt the scent of wet earth. I walked barefoot. And I listened to what I had long ignored. I discovered that true transformation lives in the details. In a glass of water sipped slowly, in a fruit cut with care, in a moment of silence fully lived. I was relearning how to live, without performance, without stage, just presence, wholeness. Chapter 13. When the World Shakes You. My life was finding its rhythm again. The simple routine, the healthy habits, the connection with nature, everything seemed aligned. But outside, the country was on fire. Corruption overflowed from the headlines, and the people had had enough. Protests erupted. Millions filled the streets, calling for justice, for dignity, for change. And something inside me, which had been quiet, reignited. I, who was focused on inner transformation, felt a deep calling toward the collective. I joined the marches, wrote articles, spoke up, connected people. I did what I could, not out of anger, but out of love for what we could become. Then came the pandemic, and everything intensified. The world dove into fear. Graphs, curves, statistics, a psychological terror that spread faster than the virus. I couldn't stay silent. I dove into the data, studied curves, patterns, effective measures. I reached out to governments, media, institutions, trying to help. My intention was clear: to bring calm, not chaos, to replace panic with action, to offer clarity and purpose. I realized my transformation wasn't just personal. It had to serve the whole. Because true change begins inside, but must ripple outward. Otherwise, it's not change. It's ego. Chapter 14. The Body That Cries Out. During the political tensions and the chaos of the pandemic, something quietly broke inside me. I began to neglect myself again. I gained weight, I drank, I lost my center. I tried to reconnect, to return to the mystery schools, to reawaken my practice of kung fu, to meditate, to recite mantras. But nothing seemed to work. It was as if my body and soul were too dense, disconnected, heavy. The tools were there, the paths familiar, but I wasn't ready to meet my essence again. The outer rituals no longer made sense when the inner connection had collapsed. It became a subtle cycle of self-sabotage. The more I searched outside, the farther I drifted from within, until my body screamed. And I understood. Once again, it was time to change. But this time, willpower wouldn't be enough. It would require surrender. A deeper journey was coming. Chapter 15. The Moment the Truth Hits. Slowly, the truth began to dawn. It was no longer about blaming the government, or the pandemic, or the media, or the polarization, or anyone else. Not the companies, not the pressure, not the expectations. I could no longer use alcohol as an escape, or restaurants as anesthesia, or expensive toys as compensation, or busyness as an excuse. All of it, every indulgence, every distraction, was just a veil. And beneath it, a void that no external stimulus could ever fill. Guilt didn't help. Neither did regret or shame. There was only one way out: responsibility. Not changing the world, changing myself. Change again. But this time, not as a slogan or a project, as a silent daily choice. It was time to stop running outward and begin walking inward. That was the beginning of the second great metamorphosis. Chapter 16. Back to Basics. I needed to rebuild, gently, intentionally. I stopped drinking, cut out processed carbohydrates, began a nutritional reset that changed my life. For the last 2 years, I've lived a different rhythm. I wore a continuous glucose monitor, CGM, to understand how food and drink affected my body, and the truth became crystal clear. I eliminated seed oils. I went to bed at 8 p.m., woke up at 4 a.m., swam at 5 a.m., and created a new routine that brought me back to life. Slowly, my body realigned. My energy returned. My clarity sharpened. I reconnected harmoniously with my wife and son. But most importantly, I realized something deeper. There's no point trying to change the world, companies, politics, or others, if I haven't changed myself first. It all begins with the mirror of the body, the mirror of the soul. And only after you change, perhaps then you can reach out to someone else, to a street, a neighborhood, a country, maybe even the world. But always, one breath at a time, in the time that is right for each one. Chapter 17. The Metamorphosis of a Life. Looking back now, I see a path shaped not by victories, but by moments of rupture, not by certainty, but by questions that refused to be silenced. I thought I was building a career, then a business, then a future. But what I was truly building was a return to essence, to truth, to presence. Each time I thought I had arrived, life whispered, "Go deeper." I lost count of how many times I had to change, how many times I shed skin, how many times I died just to remember how to live. What remained? The boy who once looked at the stars and wondered, why do I have to start over if I've lived this before? Now understands. We don't come to this life to conquer. We come to remember. To remember who we are beneath the noise, beneath the layers, beneath the roles. Change is not an act. It is a surrender. It's not reinvention. It's recollection. And sometimes, the greatest revolution is simply being whole in a world addicted to fragments. This book is not a formula. It's not advice. It's not a success story. It's a mirror, a path walked, a metamorphosis lived, one choice, one fall, one awakening at a time. If it touched something in you, then welcome. You are also in transformation. Let's walk together. Afterward, the end that is a beginning. If you made it to this page, thank you. It means something here resonated. And maybe, just maybe, you're walking your own path of change. This was not an easy book to write. Because it was not a story imagined. It was lived. And living it, with all its falls, failures, fears, and flames, was the true writing. This is not the end of a journey. It is the beginning of one shared. If it touched your soul, then may it continue within you. You don't need to change the world. You just need to change yourself. And that, sometimes, is the most revolutionary act of all. Let the metamorphosis continue. André Bianchi. About the author. André Bianchi is a strategist, entrepreneur, and transformation mentor who left behind a high-powered international corporate life to reconnect with the deeper questions of purpose, simplicity, and human awakening. Born in Brazil, he has lived and worked in countries such as Italy, France, and Japan, and helped lead some of the most impactful corporate transformations in Latin America. But it was only by returning to nature, to his family, and to silence that he began the greatest transformation of all, within. Today, he shares his reflections through books, mentoring, and quiet walks across the more than 40 beaches of Florianopolis, where he now lives. This is his first personal book after his interesting fiction experiments. And it is not a conclusion, but a beginning.